Hi, we're here with Joshua Grant, Senior Director of Innovation at Dentsu. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, thanks for asking. So, why is attention important? Why is it discussed at every event, the top of so many advertisers' minds in 2024?
I think it's an interesting question. I mean, I can speak from the context of Japan, obviously working here at Dentsu in Tokyo. I think for Japan, one of the big issues has always been that a lot of the advertisers have really focused a lot on television. TV has been incredibly dominant for a number of years and still remains incredibly dominant. But what we see kind of year over year, obviously with younger generation and sort of a more diversified content platforms that are arriving in Japan, Netflix, etc., that we see television viewership in decline year over year. So what that's doing and what that's done over the last few years is it's caused the sort of very TV centric heavy advertisers to now understand that they need to be making that shift to digital, but they have a lot of big questions around digital. And it sort of arises out of effectiveness or sort of digital ad effectiveness, which is, the advertisers will say on TV, we know the results of a 30-second spot or a 15-second spot. We know what that gets us in terms of volume response. In digital, we don't know that because we just have metrics like BTR or completed video view that doesn't really tell us the details of if there's high ad recall, if the ads have been effective. So that's kind of what started the conversation in Japan was this idea of how can we take a metric or find a new metric that's going to be as qualifying as the metrics that many of these TV centric brands use. And so we decided to, effectiveness was the thing that we discussed, and then that sort of led into conversations around attention, obviously seeing what was being done with attention in the UK, in the US, etc. So we decided to bring that over to Japan. We've just completed our first attention research. I'm actually introducing the results of that research in a couple of weeks. So it's going to be this kind of big introduction to Japan around attention metrics. But I think Japan has always been, I would say, 2 to 3 years behind the West in terms of their adoption of new things, and specifically sort of digital metrics. Viewability came a bit late, ad verification came a few years after. And I think we're at that phase now where attention is now something that our global clients who are from outside of Japan, who are doing business in Japan, are sort of asking the agency and their teams to say, hey, why are you not looking at this? Because we're looking at this around the world. And so that's kind of what led to it. And I think in Japan, there tends to be a very sort of practical view to digital. And it is always something that ROI is incredibly important. What we've seen is attention has been something that has gotten the advertisers excited around digital and feeling more confident in running digital ads because they have this way that we can all agree is a great way to assess the effectiveness of their advertising.
That was a great answer. So you touched a little bit about various platforms. So there's the idea of media attention. There's the idea, the environment in which ads run, what sort of attention they produce, and then there's creative attention, in a vacuum, whether the creative is designed to capture people's attention. How do you think those two should be viewed in coordination separately? What should people take away from the idea that there's a couple different ways to look at attention?
I think what we've tried to do is sort of, in the conversations that I have with the client, what we've tried to sort of do is layer it, I would say. And sort of answer kind of three questions. So the first question is, in the digital ecosystem, where can the highest attention volumes be found? And I think that's at a platform level, right? Because I think that's the first thing that the clients want to understand in terms of investment. So if I'm going to shift some of my TV budget to digital, there are a number of platforms that I could go to where is the highest volume of attention can be found. So first we have like a platform discussion. Is it YouTube? Is it Meta? Specifically, is it Instagram, Twitch, etc. So we look at that. Is it open web? So we look at those things first. Then we drill down to the second part, which is format, because we know that. So what we did is, we work with, for example, Realize to develop kind of impact coefficients because we know that all impressions are not equal. So what we do there is then we look at formats. So format selections, looking at TrueView versus Instagram Reel versus CTV, pre-roll, etc. So that's the second one. So where's across the platforms, where is attention? Then the second layer is looking at formats. Now, what we didn't want to do is leave it there, because my concern was always that when you do something like that, what tends to happen is the clients will go, great, here is our TV asset that we've produced for a 30-second TV spot. Please run this on digital, and we hope to see the same results, attention, ad recall, etc. And we know that that's just not the case. And so creative really became kind of the foundational piece of our discussions around attention, because what we see, obviously, with the research that we've done with Realize, is that the creative adaptation to the format and the platform yields the best results. So when we're talking about attention with clients, we have to tell them, hey, it's not just about, okay, I'm going to put all my money on, I don't know, YouTube TrueView, but I'm going to run, my 30-second TV spot that's not even adapted to the fact that attention on YouTube is probably only about 6 seconds max, right? So this is how so I guess to answer your question, we have the conversation at three levels. First, looking at the platform mix, then looking at the format mix, and then based on that format mix, making recommendations to the clients about how they should adapt their creative. And we do some creative pre-testing work as well. With Realize, that's something that we're developing together for Japan. So I think that's how we kind of approach those different aspects of it. Is we do kind of a 1, 2, 3 step process.
Excellent. And so you talked a little bit about Japan being, in some instances, a couple of years behind other parts of the world. So there's clearly, as you said, a lot of education. What are some of the advice or the best practices when you're having those conversations, just to get people comfortable with, what is a new way of measuring from what they're used to?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say there's probably kind of maybe 2 or 3 avenues that we approach in terms of doing this. So the first step is really kind of educating the agency and educating a lot of the people within the organization, because for them, attention is also new. So what I've done a lot initially is just sort of getting everyone in the agency behind this new metric, making sure that everybody understands that. And then we start to sort of evangelize this to our clients. And I think the big thing that we've been able to, specifically for Japan, I think the talking points that's really worked quite strongly is really an ROI, or media effectiveness talking point, where it's hard to dispute, if the person has not seen your ad, then they're probably not going to recall your brand, right? And I think this is something that is surprisingly more simplified than maybe things we've used in the past, where it's like, well, if your VTR equals this, then your ad recall would be this, or oh, if you have this number of completed views, then and I think we've kind of drilled down to something that's actually somewhat more simplistic, which is like, how many people saw your ad and for how long, and do they remember? And I think that that has been able to translate quite well, I think, so far in the discussions that we've had with the clients. The other aspect of it too that's been helping is obviously global clients. So clients whose headquarters are in, the UK or in the US, who have been using attention and hearing about attention for some time. Obviously, Dentsu started the Attention Economy Project back in 2016. So it's been quite some time since that started. And so you already have clients who have been seeing the results of that, who are sort of sharing that with their counterparts here in Japan. So I think it's kind of coming from both sides, which is what we're trying to do at Dentsu, which is sort of bring this new metric into Japan with a very sort of simplistic approach of, what you should be looking at is if people saw your ads or not. And we have a way to measure that. And this is the KPI. And at the same time, I think you have clients who have seen the success of that, sort of spreading that message. And I think collectively, that's how we're able to make some inroads. But we'll see. I mean, I'm just now releasing the research in a couple of weeks. So we're going to do a big PR thing about it, and we'll see how the market responds. But we've worked with a lot of partners, Teads, Oguri, the Trade Desk, Twitch, etc., who have really worked with us to develop this research that we did with you guys. So I think it's also collectively the market kind of coming together and trying to push this, which I think will help a lot as well.
Great. Thank you. And I guess my final question is obviously, you spelled it out quite concisely on the foundational elements of attention. Someone needs to see your ad in order for them to form an opinion about it. As the market matures, do you think there'll be more conversations around further down the funnel metrics of sales lift and things like that that's going to get people even more excited?
Absolutely. I think we've already kind of started to have discussions with, different partners about how we attach attention to sales uplift, even if there's a way to attach attention to like drive to store. Is there a way to attach it to sort of geolocation? I saw your ad and then I was able to measure that within, I don't know, 7 days you visited my store. So I think there are aspects of or attach it to e-commerce, right? So I think that there are definitely conversations that are happening now, and I think the future of this would be this ability to be able to truly measure like the volume responses of digital across, I think, a number of different KPIs. And so I'm quite excited about that to sort of say, okay, we know that this level of attention will equal, this amount in foot traffic. We know this level of attention will give you online conversions at X. So it'd be great to sort of eventually have that lead to those sorts of things. And also, I think on the creative side as well, obviously the market is talking a lot about AI and the capabilities that AI has. It'd be really interesting, I think, to also from the creative standpoint have some sort of very clear sort of statistically significant facts about creative, right? To say, oh, if you build your creative this way and this way, this is generally the response you will get. People will watch this, or this is how short it should be, or this is where your logo should go, or things like that. So I'm also kind of interested in that in terms of attention as well, which is creatively this sort of AI capability, which I think is something you guys are working on, right? Which is this sort of AI ability to understand specific nuances of creative and build something that is designed perfectly to fit into a certain platform and format. And then, yeah, as I said earlier, also being able to connect it to not only sales uplift, but foot traffic, online conversion, etc.
Joshua, thank you so much for sharing this time with us.
Thank you so much for having me.